Welcome to Geocache Adventures, the podcast where we explore everything geocaching. I'm your host, Shadow Dragon 1. I love geocaching. If you're listening to this, you probably love it too. If you enjoy the podcast, consider sharing it with somebody that you think would love it. You can also follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and there's a Facebook group as well, so you can join in the fun and share your adventures. There's also a Patreon page that you can join and unlock exclusive content. Hey everybody, Amy, Shadow Dragon 1 here. One of my favorite things about the podcast is the cache highlight at the end of most episodes. Sometimes it's me sharing a cache that I have found. Most of the time it's a guest sharing a cache that they have found or sometimes hidden. And I really love that part of the podcast. So I thought it would be fun to put together a cache highlights reel. So here are some cache highlights from Season 4, and you can find links to each of them in the show notes page. So you have a cache highlight for us.
Yes.
And it is GC8TYGG, and that is called DNF Magazine's Best DNF.
Yep.
Okay, explain this one to me.
Okay, DNF Magazine is a local YouTuber, vlogger, whatever you want to call him.
Okay.
And he was the one that I actually talked to about doing a Liar's Cache segment, and he never came back with anything. But he created this Liar's Cache out in a suburb of Peoria, Illinois, and we hit it on the way to a unofficial geo tour in Kewanee, Illinois. And like I said, it's right there on the cache page. This is a Liar's Cache. This is how you do it. And I just had a ball. In fact, if anybody wants to look it up, it was September 30th of 2020 was my log. So have a good time with that. Sorry, shameless self-promotion there. But it was a lot of fun because it was one of those caches where you get in there and me and my buddy are looking around. It's in a park, first of all. It's in a park, not widely used park. It's one
Okay.
of those parks that are kind of forgotten, and they're trying to re-inculcate it and get it going again, and whatever. So it's in there, and we're looking. Well, there's this bare tree. There's this mound of dirt. There's these really old, like, landscape timbers. I mean, there's nothing to look at there. There's a shelter, but it's like 50 feet from the coordinates. So we're like, well, we'll give it a shot. And we step out of the car. And it's like I said earlier, you look down and oh my gosh, there it is. This can't be right. This is way too easy. So we pick it up, we do our thing, and we put it back where it was. And I told my buddy, I said, you know this is a Liar's Cache, right? He's like, what's that? Okay, he obviously didn't read the description. So I'm filling him in. And he's like, oh, well, I'll go ahead and log that. I'll update it later. Hey, like you said.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm going to write something, but it's going to take a while. So I'm not even going to draft it. I'm just going to wait until we go for lunch and I'll write it up there. And sure enough, before we even had our meal, I had the whole darn thing typed up, ready to go. Granted, it's not the two thumb, micro, machine guy. Just it took a while because, of course, I got sausage fingers, but I got it out, and it's like, cool. I'm good. Send. And as far as I know, my buddy never did put a log in.
Oh.
I said I met him like a few weeks after. I said, hey, did you ever put that log in for the Liar's Cache? He's like, nope. I'm like, you going to? Nope. I'm like, why? He's like, I just can't think of anything to say. I'm so sad for you. Okay, whatever. Moving on.
See, I have been accused of having an overactive imagination many times in my life. I still get that accusation, as you may have guessed from the whole giant toad conversation
Are you a Walter
not
Mitty?
long ago.
Are you a Walter Mitty?
I feel like For somebody like me, this is that creative outlet. This is something to give you that opportunity to just shine. So for cache highlights,
And
you
shine we
came
do,
with
don't we?
two, which is awesome because I don't think I've ever had an earth cache highlighted before
Ooh.
that I can think of. So having two is even better. So let's start with the first one. Let's start with your hide, GC7V6GC, and that was called Fraser River Plume. Is that correct?
The Fraser River Plume, yes.
Okay. What is this?
So the Fraser River is the main huge river that empties out the part of British Columbia where I live into the Salish Sea. And it has quite a large amount of sediment that it moves out, and that creates a really interesting, unique phenomena that you can observe. But you can only really observe it either from way up in the air in a plane, and I've had a number of people who've actually logged it and successfully logged it from a plane, or more often, people will log it from a BC ferry, which crosses the Fraser River Plume line on the Nanaimo route, and sometimes on the Victoria route, but definitely usually on the Nanaimo route.
Okay.
And so it's a terrain 5 because you need to have a boat or a plane to to log it.
Seems like a fair rating.
And so it has a kind of an interesting, I think, an interesting description, and you need to read through it and understand it. And what I ask people to do in there is so of course, like every earth cache, same as a virtual, I have questions. I want you to just email me the answers. Please don't, post those answers with your log. But then I do have some things. I ask people, post a picture of the plume line as you cross it. And I've seen some remarkable pictures. The color distinction is so vivid, particularly in the summer of when people cross it, that it's just amazing to see some people's photos. And then I also ask people, in your log, send or include the coordinates you were at when you crossed it, because it moves. It's not always in the same spot. So I've put it at sort of an average location, and I tell people, like, you're going to have to watch for this on your ferry ride or on your boat ride, because you'll know it when you see it, but you won't necessarily hit it at these coordinates, but you got to put it somewhere, right? So so people have a lot of fun with it. And what's really neat is that I can collect all the coordinates in the logs, and I can plot. I've got a spreadsheet where I'm kind of plotting, where does it move to? So where are different people crossing the plume? So it's really neat. I can see at different times of year where the edge of the plume is. So it's a lot of fun that way.
Oh, that's neat. So you've got a graph in Excel that's showing that.
Yeah, that's awesome. The graph, it's not really graphed because it's coordinates. So what I do is I just have a spreadsheet of them, but then I plot the coordinates on a map.
Yeah.
And that allows me to see where those would be.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that. So I'm guessing, of course, as you said, the time of the year is going to make a difference. But if I had to guess, I would say each season for each year, you're going to have typically probably somewhere around the same variation of change.
You would think so, but it's been really interesting because it doesn't always, because there's a lot of other factors that come into play. Now, I don't want to give away the answers to the earth cache, but you would think it would be like, oh, in the spring, it'll be here. In the fall, it'll be there. In the summer, it'll be here. But it doesn't exactly work that way. It's quite fascinating.
Oh,
it's a lot of factors at play.
That's really neat. Very cool. How did you come across that location to put? Did you just happen to be on the ferry and go, oh, hey, look at that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where it started. And what's kind of funny is we had Mrs. Monkey and I, we take the ferry. We've been taking the ferry for years and years and years, basically our whole lives, going back and forth to Vancouver Island and the mainland. And we had seen this before, and we thought, well, that's really cool. What is that? So we had done some research. And like, oh, that's what that is. And then it was once we started playing geocache, it was like, that would make a really good earth cache. I'm like, oh, how would we do that? So then took some time, do a little more research. Like, okay, what would you ask questions about? How would you make this an earth cache? I actually consulted with one of the GeoWares that I know and said, can I do this? Can I do that? And got some feedback, which was really helpful. By the way, that's another thing. GeoWares are very happy to answer questions and help provide you a little direction. If you've got an idea and you want to say, can I make an earth cache on this topic? And they'll be able to give you a little more direction. So that's another good tip.
Okay.
But yeah, so we had observed it for, and I can't remember how many more trips back and forth it was, like okay, take a measurement here, I'll take, and then we're noticing, wow, this really moves. So that's when we decided, okay, we're going to kind of average out where we put the coordinates, and we'll tell people, you gotta watch for this. So yeah, it
That's
was quite a
neat.
process to put it together. A lot of interesting learning. All the science behind that particular Earth cache is very accessible. It's not a really complicated topic, but it's really interesting.
That's really cool. So for the second cache highlight, this is one that you found,
Yes.
and it's GC2Q4WB, and it's Devil's Bath cenotes.
Cenote. Yes.
Cenote. Okay, it's close.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, yeah, gosh, I found over 700 Earth caches, so it was really hard to pick one because I love most of them, and so many of them are on unique topics. We found Earth caches on, waterfalls and caves and mines and fossil beds and beaches and shorelines and volcanoes and landslides and glaciers. There's so many fascinating things, but cenotes are a rather unique and interesting piece of geology for folks who've spent some time in the Caribbean, or Florida has some cenotes. Cuba has quite a number. But a lot of the Caribbean islands, Mexico has a lot of cenotes as well. So they may be familiar with what this is, but it's basically a bowl-shaped hole, usually filled with water, in the earth. But it's quite often very even, very regular in shape. And the one that I chose, the Devil's Bath, is just a really unique location. So like I said, normally they're in tropical areas, is where people are accustomed to seeing them because of the large percentage of limestone that needs to be there to make the successful
Okay.
formation of a cenote. But Upper Vancouver Island has a large exposed area of limestone. And so not a lot of people know this, but in Upper Vancouver Island, quite out in the wild, this one's quite near a community called Port Alice. There is what they call karst geology, which is the limestone-based geology that allows the formation of these things. And
Oh.
I included a link for you as well for a little a short YouTube video I filmed with drone footage of that cenote. It's quite remarkable to see it, and it's huge. So when you go there, there's an observation platform. You can go up and make your observations and take a look, and it's a spectacular thing to see. And then it's really interesting to understand how it's formed. And then I found it quite fascinating to say, wow, something that I had seen when I was in Cuba and Florida and in the Caribbean and Mexico, and now I'm seeing it way up north here in Canada. Like, wow, I was not expecting that. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And I will definitely link to that video in the show notes for anybody that wants to check it out, because it is a neat video.
Thank you.
This stuff, the geology, a lot of times we just think of it fossils, earthquakes, and stuff, but there's really so much more to it, as you've mentioned earlier. And it gets to be really fascinating when you start to realize that, oh, like the cenote, it's only, it's typically you're supposed to find this in the tropic. Oh, wait a minute, there's one in Canada. That Canada does not scream tropics. So
Nope.
It's interesting how the earth can throw a curveball at us in a scientific form and go, yeah, I'm just gonna plop one of these here today. And
Exactly. Yeah, it often does. That's part of the fun of earth caches.
for today's cache highlights, you have for us the Mississippi Geo Tour, and that's GT4BF.
Yes, that's the Hattiesburg Geo Tour. And getting a geo tour in your area is kind of a big deal. I
Yes,
mean,
it
it
is.
really is. All the planning that those guys have to go through, and just getting everything lined up. I couldn't imagine putting one of those together. But I don't live far from Hattiesburg at all. It's only like 25 minutes. I've got several videos that are in Hattiesburg. In fact, I'm supposed to do a video for them, finding caches and things like that. But I haven't been able to. But Hattiesburg is such a nice, I guess, town. If I say city, I think of skyscrapers and stuff. But it's a big town. It's a decent sized town. I don't know the population, but it's a very eclectic mix of people and businesses and things, because we're not far from the Gulf Coast. We're not far from New Orleans. We're not far from Alabama. It's Memphis. So it's just kind of this nice conglomeration of cultures and stuff. And the Geo Tour, which I've done about half of it. I just kind of picked some up when I was driving by.
Okay.
There's some really cool, creative geocaches that are on it. I've had a couple on my TikTok and a couple on my Instagram. And I know that a couple of more are really cool because I've been to them, but I didn't log them or anything. I didn't sign it. And you really get to see a lot of what Hattiesburg has to offer, as far as the food, the people, several different businesses. The downtown area is just it's beautiful down there. They have a public art trail, which includes murals. They have over 100. They're on some list of a city of 100 murals or something. I forget what it's
Wow.
called. Yeah, and they're beautiful. There's part of the art trail is sculptures downtown that are really nice. I've visited several of those. They have another part of the trail, the electric junction boxes on corners. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They're painted up, and there's like 100 of those or something. I forget how many. And you can do that. They're always doing neat activities downtown, really family oriented stuff. You can't beat the food. And I'll tell you that right now. The food in Hattiesburg is spectacular. Not like the chain places, but the local mom and pop shops. It's fantastic. The art trails are nice. And there's also a rails to trail in Hattiesburg. So it's called the Hattiesburg Trail. No, what's it called? I just call it the Trace, and I don't remember the actual name for it. But it's an old rail line that was
Okay.
paved, and it goes from Hattiesburg, kind of northwest to Prentice. It's like 42 or 44 miles long.
Wow.
Yeah. So bike riding, walking, walking the dogs, and several sections of it have a horse trail alongside it, so folks that ride horses can ride the trail. But Hattiesburg's just it's so cool. You've got Camp Shelby, which is one of the larger military bases. I know a lot of the military training for the country goes on at Camp Shelby, and there's a couple of caches there. But they've got a really nice military museum there. It's a really, really cool place. I was actually pretty close to it the other day, and there's just boom, boom. They're doing training out there. So,
Yeah.
but the Geo Tour is really, really nice. I think it's got. I was going to try and look and see. I think it's got over 100 logs on it already, and it just released in December. And most of the folks are saying that it's the best geo tour that they've done.
That's
So
pretty awesome.
yeah, it really is. I've only done 2 geo tours, and I already know everything in Hattiesburg. So I'm just kind of like, well, we'll see what's special about it. But Hattiesburg it's just a really cool place to visit. So
Have you completed the Geo Tour or just done part of them?
I've just done part of it. It's just been some of the outliers. If
Okay.
they're kind
Yeah.
of if they're kind of path where I might be driving that day, I will pick one up. But pretty soon I'm hoping to go finish it out and do a video to try and do those guys some justice on that one. But I can't wear my hat, so
Oh.
yeah, it's because my
Branding
hat.
issues.
Yeah, well, my hat, it's a Mississippi State hat. I went to state, but that's not Hattiesburg. Hattiesburg is
Right.
USM. So they're just like, don't wear the hat. And I've got a Geo Tour hat. I think it's in my car. So they're like, here, wear this. I said, okay, I'll wear your hat instead. Because
That's
I think,
fair.
yeah, I guess they want to use it to, kind of promote the geocaching in Hattiesburg. So, which
That's pretty
I was just
neat.
like, well, yeah, I was like, wow, thanks. My videos aren't that good, but okay, they're not. I'm just goofing around.
But I think that's part of the fun of it, because you are goofing around, and I've laughed at so many of your videos just because you're out there just having fun and being goofy, and the antics that you do. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah. That I think that's the biggest thing I get out of it. I don't care how many subscribers or followers I have. So what? The few I have, having fun watching me. Did you giggle a little bit? Fine. That's the world to me, is just making folks just smile. So
Well, you have a couple of cache highlights for us today. And I'm
Cache
excited.
highlights, yes.
Yes, I love multiple ones. So the first one I have written down here was GCHWPC.
Correct. Yeah, Hotel Whiskey Papa Charlie. That I think if I had to pick one cache that was my favorite cache of all time, if it wasn't this one's really far up the list. I often think of this and describe this as my favorite cache. I found this cache in November of 2004 when I'd only been caching for a couple of months. It was one of the first caches that I took my family with me on, and my kids were little at the time, and we have such great memories finding this cache. It's called Captain Wapato's Treasure Hunt. It's in Wapato Park in Tacoma, Washington here. And guess what? It's a multi. I know how much you like multis, where we started this conversation.
I love multis.
I have grown to know the cache owners of this, the hiders of this, as good friends over the years, but I didn't know them at the time. They're a family hidden by Team Noltex is the name that they cache by as a team, as a family, and they put together this little story about, and it's all written in pirate speak, arg mateys and the whole 9 yards. But you go to a place in the park, and boy, they went far enough as to metal stamp numbers into brass plates and mount them in the park. It wasn't just like a Sharpie pin on the back of a road sign or something. And I saw that and I thought, wow, this is really well done. And Wapato Park has a lake in it, Wapato Lake, oddly enough. And they set the multi-cache up to take you all the way around the perimeter of the lake. There's a hiking, jogging trail around the perimeter of the lake.
Okay.
Anyway, so it's not like you have to bushwhack. And there's one down at the boat ramp dock at one end of the lake, and there's one across a viaduct crossing at the other end of the lake. And the final location, and my friends that hit it said the location, the final is what he found first. And he said, I have to build a cache on this, because I don't know if you remember, you're probably too young to remember, but back when I was a kid, you'd go to the park and there were these play structures to climb on, and they often had these little fort looking structures you could climb up on, and there was a fake telescope. It was just a piece of pipe mounted on a swivel that you could look through, but boy, you were exploring the stars or piloting or captaining your own ship or whatever it was, and you're a kid. And there was one of these in the park, and it had been removed from active use and kind of shoved in the back corner of this lot close to a service yard. Is kind of all askew, but that doggone telescope was still mounted to the rail. And if you, he took and painted a line on it. So if you pivoted it until the red marks lined up and sighted through that telescope,
you saw the base of a big tree, and that's where the final was, behind the tree. And I just thought, this is really
Oh,
cool.
wow.
So yeah, that's still one of my favorite caches ever.
That
And
sounds really neat.
the really cool piece personally for me, fast forward over 15 years later, like I said, I know these people now, they're friends of mine. He came, I saw him, this was in 2021, I think. He says, I got something for you. I'm like, oh, what's that? And he said, yeah, we were walking the trail, and he said, I wonder if that's still, even though the cache had been archived for years, sure enough, there's still one of the brass number plates mounted underneath a railing on the. He said, so I got out my pocket knife and pried it loose. He mounted it on a wood plaque with the GC number and the name, and he presented it to me and it's like an award. I have it packed because, like I said, I moved and I don't have it out on display right now. But that's it. It was really cool.
That
I
is
have a
so
piece
neat.
of the original number plaque from Waypoint 3 of Captain Wapato's treasure hunt. So
That's pretty cool.
that's a cool one. Yeah, that's a cool one. I had a couple other ones. If you want to go through it, a couple other ones.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next one I had was GCV is in Victor, N is in Nancy, 3-1.
Right. And that was hidden a long time ago in 2006. And I'll go ahead and also include the final one because they're really the same cache. That's
The
GC
sequel?
6. Yeah, 6-5 Whiskey 9 Victor W9V. Both caches had the same name and the same final and the same location because they were the same build. He found um, it's kind of a park, a little woodsy area
Okay.
that, and it was one of the first caches that I ever did at night. And if you've ever done caches at night, they can be a lot of fun. Almost always they're done with reflective tacks, and you take your flashlight and you find the little glowing glints in the trees and you work your way down the trail. This one was called Control the Night because you used a television remote control. You could bring your own with you, or you could in the first waypoint in published coordinates there was a Tupperware with an old TV remote in it. You just didn't know if the batteries were still going to be good. But you hiked down this trail to a large clearing, and you stood in the middle of the clearing and you pushed the TV remote buttons as you slowly turned around and pointed it in the woods all the way around you. And when you found the right tree, there was an infrared detector that would cause a little red LED to light up.
Oh.
So you would know that, oh, that's the tree. So a flashlight wouldn't help you in this condition, in this situation. You had to use something that emitted infrared light like a TV remote. And then you would go to that tree, and on the back of the tree there was one of those brass number tags with the coordinates for the next clearing and so on. And then the final location, you get to location and you do your remote at the infrared, only this time instead of lighting up a little light tell you where it was, he had mounted a laser pointer up in the tree that shone across the clearing at another tree that had the final up inside a hollow, an old hollow tree there. So that was just
wow.
such a cool thing. But unfortunately, technology out in the weather, it had problems. And unfortunately, like a lot of things, people would vandalize it, steal parts, sad to say. So he archived the first one, and then years later, hit another one with the same theme, the same things, and kind of did a little. He kind of built some metal boxes to protect things more and mount them more, and somebody still wound up stealing one or two of them. And he said, "I'm
Oh,
done.
jeez.
It's too bad." But yeah, so that the first one was hidden in 2006. I don't know what date it was that he archived it, but the second one was hidden in 2015. Sadly, they're both archived now, but all those hidden by Team Noltex, local cacher to the Tacoma, Washington area. Great fun. If you're out in the area, you can't do those caches, but I highly recommend looking for Team Noltex and filtering by caches they've hidden because they hide quality caches.
Sounds like it. Those all sound like really cool, especially the infrared with the TV remote. I haven't heard of one like that before.
I've never seen one like it since. That was so fun.
You've been listening to Geocache Adventures with me, Shadow Dragon 1. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, or go to geocacheadventures.org and you can find the information on the contact page. Theme music is by The Travel Bugs. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Have you heard of FTF Magazine? It's the magazine for geocachers. It is full of articles and pictures all submitted by geocachers just like you. I'm a subscriber myself, and I love it. My favorite part is the little snippets on the edges of the articles on all the different pages. Those are my favorites. Just go to ftfgeo.com to check them out and tell them Shadow Dragon 1 sent you.